Hi, everybody, and welcome to the SAP Press Book Club. And let's see here. We have I am Kendall Tyler, and I am your host of the SAP Press Book Club. And today's book is going to be one of our favorites. This is actually an upgrade version, Migrating to SAP S4HANA. And we have with us the authors. We have Frank, Petra, and Boris from SAP. And I will let them intro themselves real quick and let's get on with this. So, Frank, you want to kick it off?
Yes, sure. So I'm Frank Finkbohner. I'm working for SAP since 1999, 13 years as consultant for different topics like data migration, ABAP development, and now since 2011 in the development area and responsible currently for the cloud data migration content development, so for the objects for the cloud data migration.
Excellent. All right, Boris, your turn.
Yes. Welcome. My name is Boris, working as a product manager for the software update manager, so the SUM tool or SUM tool, as we say in German, and focusing on the Brownfield or system conversion topics mainly.
Excellent. Petra.
Petra Klöß. I call it implementation specialist because I had various roles. I started very early in my career to specialize on scenarios. Now I'm with the central business configuration, which is specifically the implementation of SAP S4HANA Cloud.
Excellent. So again, I'm Kendall Tyler. I'm your host. And as you guys know, I've been around forever. So I'm very intrigued with this topic because I love an ECC customer. And I love to get them over to S4 and get their journey started. So I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, but again, this is actually an updated version of the book, which is wonderful. So I wanted to start off so what topics are, what are more relevant now than the last book? What are some of the new things that have, popped up? Who wants to take that one?
I think apart from the tool update, that the experts here like Frank and Boris brought in is we definitely updated the strategy because it's all over the press, AI and other elements to really innovate. The company is way more than before. Need to innovate in a fast manner, in a very agile manner. So that was definitely one of the elements in it. From an option perspective, there are lots of arguments in it, which option actually to choose, and they have to be updated regularly because of timelines as well as technical options that we provide and templates that we provide. So 360, basically every single element had to be updated, sometimes a little bit, like strategy a little bit more. Some tools were introduced. Central business configuration, S4HANA Cloud implementation was one of what I was really proud of, that it was a whole chapter now because it's a mandatory tool. It's not just a paragraph anymore. So yeah, every single element had at least a little bit that needed to be
also
updated.
like the marketing terms, we have to change those as well. So
yeah, that if you work for SAP, you know that one thing is definitely changing constantly, and that's the names. So yes, and the other thing you also know is that once you have the names, half a year later the names are old. So if you have different names, especially when it comes to certain tools, and certain, I have this in chapter 3 to various times that I noted. Yes, after half a year we might use a different term, but you guys out there, SAP and the old terms as well. So
I don't think that's really it used to be this and now it's this, but it's the same thing.
Sometimes it's just a comma, sometimes it's just a capital letter. So whether it is the SAP STE or the private cloud or public cloud, and that is part of the book as well, to also explain the new names.
Yeah, my newest one I heard came through that it's not XM anymore. It's now HCM.
Yes, correct. I learned that too. Yep,
I know.
Yep, they renamed it again.
I know. So, how much content of this book is relevant, and it's going to continue to be relevant versus like what we're talking about? It's new. It's changed so much that the core things are going to always be there that people can always go to.
I normally would say that 80% of the book is stable, because let's say there's no much changes on the tools. So that means the core identity is always given with the book. So it's just more the additional stuff, which is, so that means updates on tools and new functionalities and complete new functions that are included. And also things like Petra said with the AI and the CBC and all those things. But I would normally say so around 70 to 80% is stable.
Yeah.
So,
in any way.
yeah, my thing is like, everybody is very like, so which path do I take? Do I take the brownfield? Do I take the greenfield? Do I take the blue field? Do I take the in-between field? So, my thing is like, if I'm an ECC customer and I've been on and I really need to, is this about value or is this about, let's just get it moved over? I mean,
That's exactly that's exactly the thing, is that first of all, this book will help you to find what this is about. That is a key aspect of it, is that this is a customer decision. We can help you find these arguments through this book, because there are a lot of examples and there are lots of measures that you can say, is it that you just want to move because it's you need to go into the cloud because now the maintenance schedule is coming up. So but you don't have the time to innovate. So, but you want to stay with the latest SAP, but not really changing your processes? Or do you make the decision to basically say, no, we need to innovate? We are in a market that needs to innovate very, very quickly. When you see companies, the bigger companies, how fast they grew, how much per year they made. I mean, previously in like in the 90s and 80s, you needed like 10 years for $1 billion revenue. You need like a couple of years now, if so. I mean, Wally Parker or Casper, a wonderful example. They grew like that. So you need to be agile. Or are you in those industries? Totally different situation. Are you talking about a subsidiary, or are you talking about headquarters? Also, different situations. There is no one size fits all. And this is why this book, I think, is so versatile and was so great to work with, because we brought in our expertise from a tool side, from an experience side, from a strategy side, to really give you the 360 on to make that decision.
Don't you think, like, when they're like, I've been on ECC for like 20 years and we spent so much time doing all this ABAP configuration in here. We did all this and that and configured. Gosh, we don't want to give it up. It's our baby. It's our thing, And everybody's like, move over here and that's all going to go away. I don't think it's all going to go away. I mean,
I think that right from the get-go, when we started S4, we knew that a conversion is a very important point. That migration not necessarily needs to be a new implementation like in S4HANA Cloud Public Edition. That is new. There are lots of new things. Technologically, it's new. So it's really, you can't migrate that. But in an private edition concept running on in a cloud environment, but still using the on-premise features that you have on the scope perspective, like industries, like languages, like business processes behind it, conversion is definitely a thing. And we listened to the customer and we developed I think, very elaborate process to get from A to B. And Boris and Frank can tell you more about this, technically how this works. Because I think that the market always differentiates between innovation by really redefining the process from scratch and innovating by adopting the technology first. Maybe Frank or Boris want to talk about this, how the conversion process actually works.
Yeah, maybe spending some words on the technology, actually.
Yeah.
So I think what's new in the book is important, the strategy and AI, you mentioned that, but for what we have included there for the brownfield or system conversion part is that we have the tools or the tool, the software update manager, available that also allows in one step to move ECC on-premise to SAP S4HANA in the context of RISE with SAP, to name one of those phrases. So SAP S4HANA Cloud Private Edition, with one step, and potentially even with downtime reduction technologies. That is new, that is covered in the book, and that's an important step. Yeah?
Interesting.
As an example.
What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, for the Greenfield approach, we are still on the migration cockpit in the S4HANA Cloud, which is currently the only tool that you can use for migrate data into the S4HANA Cloud. And if I'm talking about cloud, I'm talking about the public cloud edition. For the on-premise world, you then could check also for other tools that you can use, for example. But for the S4HANA on-premise world on private cloud, you then can use also the migration cockpit, which is coming up with 200, more than 200 predefined data migration objects. You can then use the model your migration object, the LTMOM, the transaction to define own data migration objects, to modify existing data migration objects. And at least you can also use the rapid data migration solution by SAP, which is based on the SAP Data Services. And all those things are described also in the book, how they can be used within the different areas.
So, when we talk about migrating and we talk about like, this is, this is not an upgrade. I think everybody needs to understand that we are migrating, and we are bringing our information with us. Now, how we're carrying it with us, I think, is the whole thing here, and where we're going with this. What version of SAP seems to be very confusing. Does anybody want to kind of elaborate on what are the different versions that are currently available? Because
there are basically three main versions that you can imagine. So let's start with the classic S4HANA on-premise, which means S4HANA. When we talk about S4HANA, we not only usually mean the family, we usually mean the on-premise version, which means you can install that thing wherever you want to. We had even a customer that put it on a truck. That was a fun demo, actually, to have this thing on a truck, because the leading project manager asked us, can I drive around with it? And we just said, outside here, truck, this is where it's running. Was a defense customer, but yeah, you can run it literally anywhere you like. And that was a requirement they had. They also you can modify it. It is really literally on premise. This is yours. License model means that you then pay maintenance, but you can change it not as you like it, but there are restrictions, I think. I don't know, but it is very wide, super versatile, and what you want to do with it. So that is the classic, that where we come from, R3 and R2 as well. The second thing is that we're talking cloud. So when SAP talks about S4HANA Cloud, we have two different versions that are significantly different. One is it takes the application for on-premise. This is why sometimes there's a little bit of a confusion in it, but it runs in the cloud. So you have landscape as a service. All the landscape features in it are cloud. You don't run it on your own premises. You can run it anywhere you like. You get a list from the data centers where you can run it from, whether it is, for example, Amazon or Google. So you have these multipliers that you can run it from. Even SAP obviously can run it from, but it's called private edition. It is still very versatile. It has some landscape restrictions because you don't run it yourself. You cannot modify it. And here's the big difference. Once you go into the cloud, you have signed up for regular updates and regular upgrades, very importantly. So we encourage you to have a clean core implementation. This is why Activate is in the book. Very, very important, because every 5 years, we basically tell you, now you have to update. Modifications, not a good idea. And in this case, also not really part of the contract. So slightly
subscription. That's subscription-based.
That is subscription-based, exactly. This is cloud. This is as a service comes with it, which means now you have some restrictions. I personally don't believe that these are business restrictions, because you can still have BTP extensions, you have ABAP extensions, you can still extend the code where needed, you can have side-by-side key user, all three extensibility models can run it. So your business process, I don't see really from a business perspective that this is a restriction, but from a operating model, this is different, because now we tell you there is a time frame for update. And on-premise, we don't do this. And the third, and that is what people internally and externally very often call S4HANA Cloud, it's the public edition. So no data migration, no conversion. That's data migration, obviously. Sorry, no migration to it, which means it's a new implementation. It will be updated every 2 weeks. It will be upgraded every 3 months.
Wow.
So now this, for those of you familiar with the process, they think, oh, testing and painful and blah and all that. No. We guide you through Activate, through Calm. Very highly recommended to use Calm in it as well as Activate to have a super clean core so that this runs within a couple of hours through. And also, very importantly, is you can innovate in the speed that this thing is actually designed for. It's designed that you can have really every 3 months the latest and greatest of functionality at your fingertips, and you can implement it. You don't have to wait a year. The S4HANA application is updated is an annual basis. S4HANA Cloud, technically every 3 months. So the S4HANA Cloud Public Edition is the most agile and versatile version, but it comes with a question. You have to update it. You have to upgrade. So this is why this book has this matrix that we say, what are you? What is the customer? What you said yourself. Do you want to take over your old process because you're happy with it, or do you see the need to innovate? How fast is your industry moving? Every customer is different. So for some customers, the on-premise version might be the best interims or even final. For some, it might be the private edition, and we just hope as many as possible see the public cloud as possible. And
yeah, I think new customers, that's great too.
Yes, I mean, new customers are for sure, definitely. But even then, the business scope of the private and the public cloud is different, whether it is localizations and also languages. So that's the first thing that the customer actually checks from a business perspective. Is my localization in there? Is my language in there? So that's kind of the first, is because the private edition is traditionally has more scope.
So this is a crazy question, and I know that you guys will know I'm going to ask this because I hear this all the time, and it's the basis guys. They're wondering, will I have a job if you guys are doing this? What is my new job, or what's my role? How do I fit into this picture?
Yeah, so let's say it this way, basis is still available. Even if you have a cloud system, you need to have someone who's doing the authorization concepts. So you need someone who's assigning people the authorization, who's, let's say, configuring the external interfaces and all those stuff in the public cloud. So even in the public cloud, you need to have someone doing the administration stuff. It's then not that you need to have some CDs or disk or something else like we had before, and to put it into your drive, and then you install something on your laptop, or not on the laptop, on the also on the laptop.
I always laugh.
So if you're talking about
the basement.
GUI,
the mainframe. Love my mainframe. Yeah.
So that means the public cloud, it's a different kind of basis. So you probably, it could also be that some of the administration guys are will love it because they can concentrate more on different work there. So it's not all the work they have to do and this stuff, and then someone is ringing and wants to have this. It's more concentrated because you can really say, okay, I have only those, let's say, 10 things I have to care for, and before it was 100 things. And for the others on premise, there's really no big change. So it's the same as before. And the private cloud, it's probably a mixture between
is HEC still around? That whole SAP HEC thing?
It's a different thing, but from a concept, yes.
From the concept, yes. We do not use this name any longer, HANA Enterprise Cloud. We rather say Enterprise Cloud Services, so ECS. But coming to this S4HANA private cloud part and the question, well, as a basis guy, is my job gone? No, it's not. It will may be adapted, but even if SAP is operating SAP S4HANA Cloud Private Edition, and even if SAP colleagues from ECS are executing updates as a service, they need the order. So the customer needs colleagues that are familiar with the technology that decide when to do what. And even further, something we did not mention in the book is the capability of SAP S4HANA to do zero downtime option. That is a question of operating S4HANA, not the question of migrating to SAP S4HANA. That's why we didn't cover it, but it's a product feature. SAP S4HANA Cloud Private Edition comes with a capability to do zero downtime option. That is executed by SAP as well, but there are important checks to be done by the customer, by basis guys and by colleagues from the application. So it's not that all the work and all the decision is at SAP. It's a decision by the customer what to do and in which sequence.
And I know that SAP does that all the time. When you look at the book, this is a fraction because this is the SAP fraction of the migration. The focus is on the SAP share of it. But all of us, we are aware that the complete landscape that the customer is using is not just SAP all over the place. There are other elements in there as well. Frank already mentioned the security. There might be apps that coming from partners from different companies. There might be integration into our competitors' software as well. Integration
also, Lean IX. What about
Lean IX, whether it's Signavio? So the processes that you define, they will run most likely in larger companies through various systems. And I think this book is very interesting to see when you see the implementation path going, in which direction it goes. So it goes from the monolith that we had in everything in one. Then we went to the business suite where everything was distributed. Now partially it goes back, but it will always stay a landscape. So and that's why I always say the jobs change. That's normal. Will it go away? I don't think so. I think we all think that it will not go away. It will change.
Good. I heard that they pushed out the S4 on-prem maintenance out or something. I don't know if y'all heard about that.
I did not do any research the last month.
No, that's okay. I just heard that. Was like,
no, but an important point is why, and I heard all this, you need to transition now, you need to transition now. And one of the reasons,
sick of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a reason actually, there is one element to it. When you go from an old scenario, from an ERP, let's say you are on Enhancement Pack 3 or 4, something like that, and you now want to go into S4, we have these simplifications, which means that the business objects had been changed or sometimes even totally removed. So we have compatibility packs. And these compatibility packs are really an important thing to look into if you want to keep your old processes as much as possible. They run out. They run out next year. So 2 of them will stay, but the vast majority of them will run out. And this was a big thing actually for various bigger customers to go that conversion path to say, I can stick to my old scenarios as much as possible. So SAP will take away some of those options next year. And I think that led partners and implementers to the conclusion, you might want to rethink your decision. You might want to actually partially go into new implementation and innovate your scenarios. So when you see this on LinkedIn in various forms, I think this makes total sense when you see these numbers, the compatibility pack numbers, and what partners make of it, that this is a bit of a wave going through LinkedIn at the moment.
Yeah, and I think people need to start their journey now. I really do, in order to get everything cleaned up. And, because my thing is like, what they bought 20 years ago, think about it. If I had a car, and I had a 20-year-old car, am I still going to want to drive that 20-year-old car? No, I want the fancy new car, And if you have a 20-year-old car and you've done all this modification, it's like dragging around a bunch of trailers behind you. I don't want to drag all these trailers with me. I want the new car. It's fast and fancy, So I think we need to kind of think that way too.
When you see the value generation of the customers that actually used it, that did the pass, that went through it, whether it is really public cloud, private cloud, and you see the value generation that they come up with the curve, the hockey stick that they generated to basically say not only that they went into the new technology, but really adapted also new processes. Even now, to say how quickly they can adapt to AI, the return of investment is immense. So that in itself should be a motivator.
I also think that if you look at like, this is the time for them to actually say, what are we using? What are we not? You know, or what should we be doing that we're not doing?
That's a very, very big point for AI. AI, one of I worked in the defense unit, and this general was just wonderful when he implemented SAP, the data migration. The first thing he said to data migration is garbage in, garbage out. We cannot make any decision if we put garbage in.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was just, Frank, this was the time where we met, you know, when I needed data migration advice, and I came to you guys all the time. And this general is just very straightforward. Garbage in, garbage out. This is not how it's going to work. You have to cleanse your data to be able to make, and that was military decisions. That was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But now we are at AI. How do you think AI makes a prognosis on data that is old, wrong, has duplicates or whatever? You need clean data.
I know.
So I think that it's vital to go that path and use it.
I think there's a lot of new things coming with AI that we're all going to be very impressed with, you know, coming up. So within our SAP, you know, systems. So this is kind of exciting, don't you think?
The prototypes that we use internally, obviously, in every single area to try it out. I love it. I think it's fascinating. I think it's just great. And just like HANA. So HANA started out as column storage. We do column storage. After like half a year, like what? Okay, not interested. We didn't translate the technology into how the business is using it.
That's because everybody's like, it's too expensive. Too expensive.
It was too technical. But then we translated into now this is how you can run a supply chain. This is how you can run a workforce management. Now using the technology of HANA to really design the process in a different way. AI has the same thing. So I think that the AI at the moment is the technology to enhance existing processes. But internally, and this is why we have a large investment into it, it will change how the business process will run. And also how implementations will be run.
Yeah. Oh, great.
And maybe adding why it's time to go to SAP S4HANA now. Clock is ticking. The support for the previous good old business suite will be ending. And the resources that are capable to support you are restricted. So we are doing our part to educate everyone that is interested, but nevertheless, there is a bottleneck. So it's better to start early now to catch up.
And that's part of the data migration part, isn't it? Planning, structuring the task and the data migration projects.
That's the thing. The main with a new implementation, the main issues or the main pain points are to plan the data migration and to just don't forget any kind of task that you need to do and all those stuff. And we also have a chapter here in the book that is supporting you and how to plan the data migration. The Greenfield implementation, and you can use it for every kind of implementation. It's a general structure model, so you can also use it for success factors or any kind of data migration, because the data migration is always generic. So you have data from somewhere that you need to bring into a target system, and the steps for all the systems, it's always the same.
Yeah.
If it's a SAP or non-SAP then it's always the same. So from that point of view.
Okay, guys, this is our time where if you have a question, you can put it in the chat and we can ask the authors what you think. We've had some crazy questions in the past, so I can't wait to hear these because, you know, everybody has a different way of migrating and getting where they want to go or what are they doing, you know. Okay, here we go. Let's start. You can choose. All right. So I heard that you can choose to not activate some new functions or upgrades if they do not align with your business processes that have been activated. Is this true?
It's a toggle system for many systems. So S4HANA Cloud has this public edition, I know. And the industry switches of S4 had the same thing. R3 partially did this with the enhancement packs. So they also had the I call it switch framework because it's the non-technical. I'm a business side. I'm not an architect in it. But yes, we don't force many changes. We don't force onto the customer. What we do force is when we go to S4, this is the simplifications. Yeah. So to really that the business partner has been revamped, that is something that you go through. Now there's no option to stick with your old creditor. You have a business partner now. But when it comes to new features, very often they are toggled, which means you have to switch them on.
So
the documentation will tell you whether it is switchable or not.
So is the migration mainly like the job of like the basis guys, the ABAP guys, the MDM guys, functional guys? Who do you think like is really kind of like pulling the load in most of this?
I see both. I've seen, I don't know how you guys, but in S4HANA Cloud, I've seen all sorts. I've seen the functional guys even doing it. I've seen the end user doing it because it was finance and it was very straightforward. Activate defines it as its own role. And it's up to the project manager to find the person who does it, who understands the data, who understands the data. He sometimes has to make the decision on what data to leave behind. So it's better to have some business knowledge in it.
Should you like, let me ask you this, should you archive everything before, or should you, what do you think?
That's a question for the experts here.
We all think.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the strategy. So the main thing is that if you're doing a new implementation, normally your history is gone. Let's say it this way. So you cannot import any kind of history documents. So for finance, there's a small, let's say, possibility to migrate balances, history balances, but any kind of documentation is normally also not allowed to be migrated. From a finance perspective in different countries. So there's also no possibility to migrate history things. So that means you can really start with a fresh system and get rid of all your old data, which is not needed anymore in that at that point. There are also a couple of different strategies or tools available. Where you can store your old data or keep it, let's say, available, for example. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
In cloud, you can have the side-by-side scenario where you can, for example, create your own app and store, for example, your sales data, not all the data, but the data you need into a specific own app which you can build there, and then you can have access also to your old sales orders and then the sales data and a couple of it. And then and there's multiple other tools that you can support here, or services that you can also use your data and put it on let's say to a service provider, and where you then can access the data again.
So here's a good question. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, go ahead, Boris.
Well, I would claim topic archiving is relevant for system conversion. So for Brownfield, that is, if we have a system conversion, it's a one-to-one relationship. We have one source system and it's completely been converted to SAP S4HANA. That means everything that's in will be in the S4 system. Maybe that's a drawback, because with the new implementation at Migration Cockpit, you can select what you take over. It may be less data, but maybe it's a benefit to say, well, in the S4HANA system, we have the historical data that may be relevant for the one or the other scenario where we use AI to get better results. So archiving is relevant.
So if you're doing Greenfield, you really don't have to archive, but if you're doing Brownfield, you really should archive because you're dragging everything over.
Exactly, and that's the point now concerning archiving and downtime considerations. If we say we have a large source database, the larger the database is, the longer the downtime will be, or the standard approach. We have tricks there to reduce it, but that's an aspect to say, well, I reduce the database footprint by archiving, And that means I have less downtime. Nevertheless, afterwards, I'm still able from S4HANA to access the archive to get the data. But I do not have to put them through the migration channel, creating downtime. That's the
really
essential part for me. Yeah.
So I have a question, which is, I love this question, and someone asked it, which is so cool. Okay, so what kind of approach should you follow for an S4 migration, Greenfield or Brownfield, from an older SAP ECC version? Let's say you're off like maintenance and you are behind, or you are what would you do if you're like what is that company that buys SAP software and then lets you in, you're off support, one of those? What if you're like on R3? What do you do? Can you do it?
Yeah. Let's say this way, a brownfield approach. Boris can also say it. You need to have a specific SAP version to be able to do a brownfield conversion.
So you have to upgrade until you get there?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the point. So is it possible? Of course, we have all the means. Does it make sense? Oh, this I doubt.
Questionable.
Yeah? So the specific phrase is one-step conversion. We offer a one-step conversion if the source system is SAP ERP 6.0. With 6. Or without.
Remember that,
any
guys.
enhancement.
6.
It's 6. It's ERP 6.0. So if you're running ERP 5.0 or 2005, I think, or R3 4.6C something, technically it's possible. But as you say, it's an upgrade and an upgrade. And then you have to consider, well, what project effort do I have? What kind of downtimes do I have? Shouldn't we simply go for using the migration cockpit into a new source system?
Yes, but I would bring in, that is true, and I love this idea. But before you do this, I would actually recommend a trial system. I would actually go into an S4 trial system. That's description also in the book. There are various trial systems, cloud as well as on-premise. Go to S4HANA on the SAP.com page. They will guide you to the trial system and really, really look into this. Do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
Because I think that it's like an iPhone. Yes, you can use an iPhone too to make a call. You can.
Yeah.
Do you really want to run this as your phone, as your, or do you want to miss all the features that this phone now has? And I have an old one, which is 12, but still, I mean, there's still already a difference. And I run a not so old one. So in our speak, I have kind of like a medium age phone. But even on a phone, you already see it. So I would recommend make yourself knowledgeable on how the current system looks like, S4HANA and S4HANA Cloud. And if you still believe you want to stick to your old one, then as Boris and Frank said, that's your option. I personally think you might want to go for the new stuff.
Yeah. I have a great question for y'all. This is a good one. So we are a conglomerate with different versions of SAP. ECC all the way to S4HANA 2309.
Yep.
They're all up to date. And we want to consolidate into one instance.
Cool.
What are the key issues in such a transformation?
Consolidate into one from various releases. That is project structure, number one.
That's project structure. So normally you would, let's say, normally they start with one system, the main system. So it could be that you, if you are already on an S4HANA system like 2023, you can say, okay, that is my new main system. And I then import all the data with the migration cockpit into that new system. So
do you do it one at a time? You do each one.
You do it one at a time.
Yes.
Okay.
One at a time.
When I was consultant, I did this for several customers. And normally
we had customers with 1,200 systems that did this.
It normally takes years. Let's say this. So I was at the German army. After 4 years, I then left the German army, and
they're still doing it.
that are really big companies with thousands of different systems, self-made and all the things.
I think
you
U.S.
have
government might be one too, by the way.
They don't consolidate that much.
I also work for the U.S. Army, and there we also consolidated several systems for them, and it takes years normally.
Yeah.
Because all the systems are completely different. They have completely different processes and all the things. So you really need to have a good planning and a good, let's say,
I'd go for the
roadmap.
low-hanging fruit too, wouldn't you?
Yeah. You need to have a roadmap just to say, okay, we are now going for this direction. And you have to train all your participants, your users that are using the system later. And also, you also have to train your members in the warehouses that they can use the barcode scanner, the new ones that maybe are coming with the new system. So that is all things you have to plan. And normally that takes years. So so that means, for example, you start with one big implementation that the first one, let's say, takes a year, maybe 1.5. And then you have we call it in the previous times, you have your blueprint. So you have your golden system and all your things and your template for the other systems to migrate. And then you just implement those templates with the others as well. So yeah,
That makes sense.
that's the
Okay,
normal
here's
thing.
I got a good technical question for you. Ready? So client is on Oracle database and EHP 8 R3 and wants to go to S4HANA 2023. What's the best way to proceed? And then some using DMO, SUM using DMO.
Migration is that, yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. When you run onto an old database, which means that the processes you currently have a look at that you integrate into or that you basically convert to are still running on, they're not optimized for HANA, which means they're the old scenarios. Again, you are updating an old, you're basically updating a Beetle by putting a Porsche motor in. Is this possible? Yes. Is it a cool thing to do? Yeah. Do you want to run it as a business? Yeah, I don't know. I would prefer to have both, the Beetle with the Porsche motor to play with, but the Porsche as a whole thing to run my business on. Just as an example, I mean, phones, you can have so many. The moment that you run not on HANA means that the process itself is not optimized for a in-memory database. You're running not only an old process, you're running it on an old machine.
So would you just pull the data out at that point?
Yes. That was my personal opinion.
Me too.
But
that's what I would do.
If that is not possible, that was then, can you do it? Yes, you can upgrade it step by step to S4.
Seems like a lot of time and money on that one. All right, here's another question. Migrating into HQ S4HANA from our ECC, should we translate our material numbers to HQ numbers beforehand or make it part of the migration itself?
Boris, Frank, do you have any experience with customers on that side?
HQ?
I don't know.
Might have to Google that one.
Yeah, I would say
is HQ the headquarter or
headquarters, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess as a techie, my usual answer is those application questions are answered in what we call the simplification item list.
Yeah.
That is the truth where those questions are answered.
Yeah, and it's also your decision if you, for example, have different material number ranges and in different areas. So I had, when I was consultant, also people, they said with such thing that they said, okay, we have our old numbers. We are now going to complete new product numbers and a complete new number range. And there's, for example, what the migration cockpit supports is you have to complete field mapping then available. So that means you're saying, okay, I want to have this old number and an internal number, and then you automatically get the field mapping for all these transformations being stored in the migration cockpit. And if you then migrate any other, let's say, open sales order, open purchase order, or other, let's say, data migration objects, which is related to those old numbers, there's also the mapping there. So this then knows, okay, my number ABC from the external system is now 169 in the new system, and then you can directly map it with the migration cockpit. So it's possible, but it's also, you have to make the decision by yourself. Will you keep the old external numbering, or will you go with the new internal numbering? And will you transform all the things? And yeah, there you can also fail. So I also had customers which failed afterwards because they transferred all into internal numbering and then had several materials doubled 5 times because they had new names, and the guy in the inventory had a package and is this in the system? No, we created new. And in the end, they had 5 times the same material with different numbers created and 5 times different stock for the same material. So you have to have a concept, a really good concept, and also train your people, which are then doing the inventory, and then to check if they are doing it correctly.
Okay, here's another one. Ready? Could you please shed some light on the role and scope of SAP Data Services in data migrations? I guess they want to know what their role is going to be involved if you're in data services in a data migration.
Yeah, you can use data services for data migration. So we have a lot of customers, especially in the US area. They already have SAP Data Services licenses. They are often using SAP Data Services either to do the data migration using, for example, the rapid data migration solution, where they can import the data using the iDocs in that way. Or what they also are doing is that they're just, let's say, extracting the data with the SAP Data Services and then filling the data directly into the staging tables for the data migration cockpit, or that they just fill it into the data migration templates, the XML files that we provide. So it's both possible, and both is used by customers with the SAP Data Services. And SAP Data Services.
So iDocs becomes what?
iDocs is just let's say it this way. For the migration cockpit, we have the XML. That is just the transport medium to transport the data from one system to the other system to load the data into it. Rapid data migration, the best thing what you can do is you're just using the iDocs. So then you have the medium iDoc, and you just put all the data into an external iDoc, and then you put the iDoc into the inbound on the target system, and then it runs through the complete API that is then processing the data into the target system.
That sounds easier. Okay, so does the book cover migrating Fiori apps from ECC to S4HANA? They're doing Fiori apps in ECC.
I guess this is...
I don't think we have a specific migration topic covered there. We have some remarks on that, of course, as stated in ECC, you can also use SAP Fiori. We have some remarks on how to set up the Fiori front-end server.
Do a lot of customers do that? Do a lot of customers run Fiori apps in ECC?
Yeah, there are some,
yeah.
Indeed.
There are?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So do they just, they're pretty much do they just kind of go, if they're Fiori, they should just be the same, right?
Not necessarily. As a functionality behind it is because the simplification list comes up again. So a very easy example on the simplification list. In ECC, you had a creditor. You had a creditor and you had a debitor. Two different business objects that were linked to each other and were obviously logistics, buying and selling products that was needed. In the HANA optimization, that whole construct was simplified into a business partner. So if you have a Fiori app now dealing in logistics and you deal with a creditor, you have to somehow adjust this now because the creditor is gone.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I mean is that the Fiori itself is referring to elements that might be simplified. So you have to go through the same simplification cleansing that you did with your data itself.
Interesting. So would that be something you do after or during the migration?
No, this is so. I had various customers at the beginning. So like I said, in my previous position, I was in similar roles. And one of the questions I got was, I don't want to do that now. I want to do that in like half a year. What can I do now in my old system to make the migration easier? And one of the things you can do is take the simplification list, go with that thing through your system, and there are tools that help you to go through it, to really see what can you cleanse now. And one of them is you can actually start the implementation of a business partner. Do it now. There are several objects, there are several actions and cleansings that you can do now that simplifies the world when you come to actually converting the systems. And one of them for Fiori is make a list of the Fiori apps, see whether they're affected or not, whether the items that you have on those screens is on the simplification list or not. And then you have a list of Fioris where you say, okay, you did that work, you know how they look like. Redoing is fairly simple, or the ones where you say, well, you have now them on the procurement process with creditors left and right and up and down. So obviously that doesn't work the same way.
With talking about like that. So, when you installed ECC, you did it like, okay, we're going to do finance first, then we're going to do supply chain, then we'll do production planning, then we'll do quality management, then we'll do with S4. What is it?
So here's the thing is that never ever a table works on its own. It's always a business process. You always implemented business process. Nobody actually implemented master data. No, they don't work. Master data is not a process. It was part of a larger project to say procurement. And step one was to transfer the master data into the system. So when you think in these modules, and Kendall, I just interpreted this as you think in these modules. No, you always thought in business processes because the customer knew intuitively the material master is not a process. So that's why you didn't implement, I'm doing FI. No, you do bookkeeping, you do accounts payable, you do accounts receivable, you do liens, or you do asset management, but in these processes. So, and that has not changed. Since the business suite, it was really vital to be aware of what your business process looks like, what your business process needs. The thing that we did now, and that's a big difference, is in Activate, we adjusted way more information on how to do this. We have now a whole team who shows you right from the get-go, even with the fit gap analysis. Now we're doing fit to standard by saying that even now you can have pre-configured content on these processes. But that's migration is processes. You need master data to do it, but when you don't do logistics, why do you migrate the material master? For example, if you don't do anything in HR, if you go success factors with no integration whatsoever, why do you migrate the people into S4? Why don't you migrate them into success factors? So the strategy that Frank was talking about at the beginning is that that's a vital thing. You need to have a strategy. Where do you want to end up with your processes? And then the rest falls into actions.
So people want to know I'm preparing myself to support this migration. What kind of certification exam do I need to take?
Start with Activate. If you want to go business process, specialize on a business process. My recommendation is don't be the general to certified in everything. Go one and go deep. That's my recommendation. Be an expert. Pick one business process. Be the finance guy or the logistics guy or HR, but don't do everything. We are very diverse. The solutions in especially HR versus finance are different.
Okay, someone just asked this last question.
Frank?
Last question. Ready?
Yeah.
Will the HR SAP tables, example, PA 0001, PA 002, etc., be available in S4HANA? Will old reports that use the PN PCE logical database still work?
Not in cloud.
For me, that would again be a question for the simplification item list that holds all those information. And of course, if you have your own custom code in ECC and you do the conversion, part of this is to adapt your custom code where we have tools answering exactly that question. If you have accessed specific objects from the old world that are no longer there, you'll get support to adapt your code.
Perfect. Excellent.
Well, they will not be available in S4HANA Cloud Public Edition. That I don't know for sure. For the public edition, no, we're doing success factors.
For the HCM, we already have data migration objects for the cockpit, but it's for as for HCM, it's not for the public cloud available. And there it's for employees, relationships, and those stuff.
Interesting. Well, guys, it's almost time. And, you know, this has been, how many books have we done, Boris? How many have you written now?
Well, I think it's my third book.
What about you, Frank? You're the man.
Frank is the man.
Yeah, it always depends on how you count it. If you count also the edition, it's I guess the 13th. Or this is the 12th, and the 13th is coming in May. If we just count the books without the editions, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Gracious. What about you, Petra?
This is my second SAP book. I got, as you can see on the title, one book that has nothing to do with SAP, but the second SAP.
Excellent. Well, we're going to get your book in the top 10 list.
Ooh.
And I want everybody to remember that you can get 15% off on this book by using our code BookClub15 when you order your book, and you get 15% off from us here at SAP Press Book Club. And I want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to thank Petra, Frank, and Boris as well. And remember, you know, we're going to have another book next month, and so more to come. But if y'all ever have any questions, feel free to respond back to SAP Press, and we'll get those questions answered by these authors, that people that are still here that didn't get their answers finished. So thank you again. And any last remarks? What do y'all say? What do you, inspiration for everybody? What's your
Well, first of all, thank you, Kendall, for organizing and having us, for that great opportunity. Wonderful question. So many thanks for that. And everybody out there, I can only say this is the book itself was fun to write with, and we are truly convinced it will help you in many ways. And if you have a question, our name is on it.
Excellent. What about you, Boris and Frank? Good luck.
Yeah. I wish all the readers of the book and all the other persons which were in the call now a nice journey and a good journey and a safe journey into wherever they want to go, if it's S4HANA or something else.
I think it's a fabulous journey for everybody to take, and it's going to be exciting. And remember, SAP can be fun again. So that's what we're doing. So thank you again. Thanks, everyone. And goodbye
Thank you very much.
from SAP Press.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.